Hi, I'm Bonnie Kempke. Welcome to my studio and welcome to Quilting on a Thread. If you've been following my quilt journey, you know that I've been working on this modification of a Riley Blake's design quilt. The pattern name is Anne of Green Gables, and it's a 64 inch by 64 inch quilt. I've turned this into a 104 inch by 104 inch king size quilt, and so I have a lot of zones that I'm working on. And in having a lot of zones, I have a lot of tails that need to be buried. I'm using this modern wave quilt by Quilt Off, and I'm using it all different ways to create interlocking waves across my quilt. And so because of that, I have multiple tails of thread, both at the beginning of a zone and at the end of a zone. This particular zone I'm working on right now happens to be at the end of the row that I'm working on, and it'll have like 6 repeats of the various waves interlocking with one another. So before I rehoop my quilt, I want to be sure to bury any of the tails that I've left within my quilt. And in doing that, I'm preventing a couple of things from happening. When I come back, were this the middle of the quilt and I have another zone to the right of this or to the left of this, by burying these tails, I don't run the risk of getting these tangled up into my new row of stitching, my continuation of that wave, if you will. And so what I do, now I prefer to knot my stitches, and that's because I've done that for as long as I've been quilting. But a lot of people will go ahead and do a lock stitch, but it's the same. You still need to get rid of those tails in a way that do not interfere with the quality of your work. And so to do that, I use a tool that I love. These are the Dritz looped needle threaders, and I use these exclusively. And so I have my looped threader. I have a sharp sewing needle, just any standard sewing needle will do, a pair of tweezers, and a nice sharp pair of scissors. So what I do is I locate my ends and I make sure that my knot is there and secured. Pull the 2 ends of that tail up, feed them through my needle threader, grab my needle, thread this through my needle, pull the tail through, making sure that I have a good amount of thread and plenty of tail. Now I go and find the hole underneath the knot. And it's important to find the hole underneath the knot because I am going to pull the knot through that hole. I don't want to have a new hole. I want to use the hole that my stitch had come out of. So I look here and I put my hand underneath the quilt body, and the reason why I put my hand underneath the quilt body is I'm going to be rocking this needle through the batting. And I don't want to go so far that I come out the back of my work. I don't want the needle to come back out the front or out the back of my work until I'm ready to remove the needle from the work. And that's usually about a needle length. So I find my hole and I go into that hole and I start rocking the needle through the batting, making sure, again, that I don't come out the back of my work. Then I get the tip of that needle out, and because I don't want to prick myself with the needle, I use the tweezers to pull the needle on out. Now I have the thread pulled. The next thing I do is I kind of find that knot and I give this thread a tug. What I should feel and hear sometimes, not always, you won't always hear it, but you feel that knot go into the hole. Knowing that, you can take your scissors and come and nip the thread close to the body of the quilt, being careful not to cut the body of your quilt. Now you take that hole and you take the tip of your finger or your nail hole that your needle came out of. What that does is that prevents the thread from continuing to poke out just that little bit out of the material. But now I've buried that thread into the batting so that it's not going to work its way back out of my body of work. So I hope that that resonates with you and helps you in your quilting journey, and hope to see you again here on Quilting on Thread. Bye-bye now.